The Russian Aerospace Forces have begun to introduce the service's first class of nuclear-tipped air-to-air missile into service, according to a report by the U.S. Armed Forces Defense Intelligence Agency. While little remains known regarding the missile class, it is widely expected to be a new variant of the R-37M, a missile class that was first introduced in the mid-2010s. The R-37M, a product of the Vympel Missile Design Bureau, was developed for the MiG-31 Foxhound heavy interceptor before later being adopted for the Su-30SM and Su-35S Flanker multirole fighters and the Su-57 Felon stealth fighter. Prior to the war in Ukraine, in which the R-37M has apparently been a notable threat to Ukrainian air operations, in-service examples of the weapon were very rarely seen. Speaking to the war zone before his death in a 2023 flying accident, Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot Andriy Pilshchikov said that the R-37M, typically fired from within Russian airspace, was limiting our capabilities to conduct our missions. Of course, if you're maneuvering, we are not able to provide an airstrike or something else, so the game is still very, very tough in the air and very, very risky. If you're not aware of the launch of a missile, you're dead. The R-37M program dates back to the early 1990s when it began life as the R-37, intended to arm the Foxhound in its much-improved MiG-31M version. An example of the original missile, also known by the in-house designation Su-30SM, was first launched from a MiG-31M in 1993, destroying an aerial target at a reported range of 142 miles. Tests of the missile were successfully completed early the following year, but the demise of the Soviet Union meant the improved MiG-31M was cancelled as a cost-saving measure, together with its planned armament. However, with subsequent efforts to upgrade in-service Foxhounds to MiG-31BM standard, the program was revisited at the beginning of the 2000s. Development was now focused on the enhanced R-37M, or Su-30SM. The revised missile was first launched from a MiG-31 in 2011 and completed its service trials in early 2014 before entering production. The first operational unit began to receive R-37Ms in 2018. Weighing 1,124 pounds and 13 feet long, the R-37M is intended to engage targets at considerable range. This has led to suggestions that it might have been optimized to defeat airborne early warning and control aircraft and other high-value assets. However, since the R-37M was developed to serve as the primary armament of the MiG-31 interceptor, it should be capable of engaging a wide range of targets, including low-flying cruise missiles. Looking at the R-37M in detail, it is powered by a dual-pulse solid propellant rocket motor, which propels it toward its target while the missile receives mid-course updates from the launch aircraft. During the terminal phase of the engagement, an onboard dual-band active radar seeker can reportedly lock onto a target with a 54 square foot radar cross-section at 25 miles or more. The R-37M carries a very large 60-kilogram warhead, around 3 times the size of those usually integrated onto air-to-air missiles, which provides a greater capacity to integrate a miniaturized nuclear warhead. If fired from high altitudes and at high speeds by MiG-31BM interceptors, the missile can engage targets up to 400 kilometers away. Since a nuclear warhead is also available for the missile's predecessor, the R-33, it would make good sense that the R-37M is also capable of being armed with an alternative nuclear warhead, which would be better able to destroy larger formations of aircraft or missiles. Presuming the new missile mentioned by the Defense Intelligence Agency is a version of the R-37M, this and the older R-33S would be the only nuclear-armed air-to-air missiles in service anywhere in the world. Back in the Cold War, the U.S. Air Force also had a nuclear-tipped air-to-air missile, the GAR-11, later redesignated the AIM-26A, or Nuclear Falcon, which carried a W-54 warhead with a yield of 0.5 kilotons. The GAR-11 was the only guided nuclear-armed air-to-air missile ever deployed by the U.S. military, although the Air Force also received the nuclear-armed AR-2 Genie unguided air-to-air rocket. Efforts to develop a version of the infrared-guided Sidewinder with a nuclear warhead were eventually abandoned. However, the Russian R-37M is the world's fastest-known air-to-air missile class with a Mach 6 speed and has the second longest range in the world, surpassed only by that of the Chinese PL-XX. It is maneuverable enough to be able to neutralize small fighter-sized aircraft. The integration of nuclear warheads onto the R-37M would allow a single Russian fighter or interceptor to neutralize full squadrons of enemy targets, entire salvos of cruise missiles, or large swarms of drones, with each MiG-31 interceptor or Su-35 fighter able to carry 4 missiles. The fielding of nuclear-tipped air-to-air missiles follows a broader trend in the Russian armed forces towards using nuclear assets to asymmetrically counter the much larger forces of the country's NATO adversaries. A nuclear-armed variant of the R-37M could be particularly useful against stealth aircraft such as the F-35, which has been deployed in very significant and growing numbers across the country's European, Arctic, and Far Eastern borders by Western Bloc and allied states. Although Russian radars may struggle to form a target lock on the F-35 from longer ranges sufficient to hit such a fighter at very long ranges, the fielding of a nuclear-tipped air-to-air missile reduces the need for accuracy, with the wide blast radius and wider electromagnetic pulse potentially being highly effective against such targets. The R-37M has been combat-tested extensively in Ukraine and been evaluated highly positively in both Russian and Western assessments. The missile is primarily deployed by MiG-31 interceptors, which have by far the highest cruising speeds of any combat jet in the world, and carry far larger and more powerful sensor suites than other Russian combat aircraft. Russia is unlikely to reveal much in the way of information about its new nuclear-armed air-to-air missile. It is significant that it has been referred to specifically in the DIA's report. While the R-37M is, by all accounts, a very formidable long-range weapon, the apparent existence of a nuclear-tipped version is another complicating factor for any adversary, and provides a capability likely unmatched by any contemporary air-to-air missile. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel to get more videos like this and stay by the side.